Welcome to the first official subject-based episode of Decomposing. This is Daria, and today we're going to start off easy. Nothing too brain-busting. I wanted to take some time to talk about album formatting. So first things first, I know, deep listening, that's like going through an album from start to finish, isn't necessarily the most popular way to consume music these days. It was probably a more popular thing like 20 or 30 years ago. But then again, the radio worked the same way as streaming does now, and a lot of groups were found through singles or their most commercially popular songs. But I'm betting that if you're here, listening to this as a music fan, there's a chance you've listened to one, if not a couple albums from start to finish. Like I said before in our little Get to Know Me episode, I was meticulously deep listening pretty much right as soon as I realized I was really getting into music. If we think about an album at surface value, it's a pretty big deal for an artist, a true labor of love, right? Like, usually they take anywhere from 6 months to a couple years to make, obviously with some exceptions, but that is a big body of work to be releasing. It's essentially an outpour of all your energy, thoughts, opinions, ideas, and life experience at that point in your career. An album is an opportunity to completely customize and design a time in your life and convey it exactly how you want to a listener. So, given that task, why wouldn't you go all out? And if there's one thing we probably already know about artists, it's that details are always taken into account. Think about physical art. It's probably very similar. It's easy to look at a painting and just conjure up an opinion after looking at it for a couple minutes and then walking away. But the person that created it could have taken months upon months, not only to plan out the image of the painting, but what kind of canvas they were going to use, how they landed on their preferred medium, what tools to execute the creation the best, and then once you get into the actual image, there's obviously infinite opportunity as to how exactly they landed on what they did. Artists also throw in subtleties in their artwork all the time, things that you might not catch on the first look. Other places you might find this relatable could be in movies or TV shows. Sometimes there's hidden details on the set that you didn't notice until you'd watched it for like the 4th or 5th time. Books even. Sometimes authors put in these little characteristics to give you clues about characters before something big happens in the story. And once again, they're so easy to overlook sometimes. I know how many times I've watched a movie and then seen forums or discussion boards online that point out some important detail in one of the characters' clothes or something like that. I think, how did I miss this? Sometimes it's huge stuff, like something that will totally alter your entire perception of a piece. And why does this happen? Over the period they're given, artists have thought over the vision they have for the piece to death, basically. Everything is calculated, and every little detail matters. It is really a testament of love for how much they care about their work. Now, I know it's a little bit of a paradox to say, look harder at the things you're having trouble seeing, because upon one listen, you're not always going to pick up on those kinds of details. But next time you listen to an album in full, there are some interesting things along these lines that you might want to pay attention to. Firstly, the first and last word on the album. Sometimes artists use this as a place to declare a creative attitude for the work. I remember back, one band I liked said they purposefully made sure the first word on the first track on the album was go, because they wanted the record to have this new, refreshing energy, a brand new start for the group, and go was just like a little nod to that. Sometimes the closing word works the same way. The artist will leave the last word as something sentimental, or just like a good note to leave the listener on. And in fact, sometimes they combine the two, and the beginning and closing words go together as a little saying. Also, think about the way the tracks on an album are laid out. This is huge. Artists have the freedom to arrange songs exactly the order they want on an album. So when listening in full, think about how it's organized. It's probably likely that you'll have a couple high-energy songs next to each other to complement each other, and then the next one will be a little slower and more relaxed to break up the album. This is something that is totally responsible for the mood around the album. Like, a cool little experiment to do is to take your favorite album, look at how the tracks are aligned, and then rearrange them and listen that way. it'll probably be a totally different experience. In fact, sometimes we're just so used to the track listing, it might even just sound inherently wrong to you to listen to them in any other order. Think about progressive albums in particular. They have the common characteristic of bleeding into each other for storytelling purposes. Obviously, rearranging tracks on a progressive album will totally alter the story, or even make it completely unclear. Track listing is really important on any album in that same way. On the same note of songs bleeding into each other to add to the story, paying attention to any silence or the lack of silence between tracks could be a detail artists incorporated to let you know these songs are meant to have something in common, or the story continues into this next song. Pay attention. The same goes for silence. Usually there's just a couple of moments of silence between songs to naturally break them up and separate them from the others. Obviously, imagine if there was no silence between tracks on an album. That would certainly give you a different impression and experience of the work as well, wouldn't it? But sometimes there's an unusually long amount of silence between songs. This might be the artist leaving some time to take in exactly what you just heard on the last song, to really emphasize the message they wanted to convey. Lastly, think about the song that starts the album and closes the album. Lots of groups put their best song, or an introductory song, as the first track on the album, either to catch your attention or leave you curious as to what is next. This is one of those more obvious calculations because they want to inspire you to listen to the entire record. Closing songs, on the other hand, are usually a little heavier, more bold, have a statement message, or a bit of a ballad format. The artist is probably doing this to leave you with an impression, maybe even something that makes you think, something profound and intense, because they want you to remember their music and leave you feeling confident or contemplative. Well, those are a couple of things to consider next time you listen to an artist's album in full. And if you haven't listened to an album in full before, now is a great time to start. Some of these little hidden details could tell you a lot about the group or the artist's personality, or even just how the artist wanted to make you feel while listening to the album. Join me again on our next episode, where we'll continue dissecting, or decomposing, rather, another musical phenomena. To hear more podcasts by my fellow team members at The Arrow, you can visit southeastarrow.com/multimedia, and feel free to shoot me any emails about the program at delawson1s@cmo.edu.